Hey guys, tonight we're going to do something a little different. You're not just going to lie there with your eyes closed waiting for the ceiling fan to hypnotize you into sleep. No, tonight, you're going to uncover a lost Viking village and under a parking lot. I know, bizarre, right? But stay with me. Picture this. A half-lit evening, a cheap cup of gas station coffee, and the scuffed heel of your shoe suddenly catching on a cracked patch of pavement. Not exactly the stuff of legend, until you notice what's glinting between the broken slabs. It's not a bottle cap or a lost key. It's bone, a piece of something ancient. And the ground beneath you? It's breathing, not literally, you're not in a horror film, but it's hiding something, and tonight we're going to dig it up together. You sure you're ready? Because honestly, between the mud, the whispers, and what's waiting under that asphalt, you probably wouldn't last 5 minutes in sandals. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in the middle of a half-full lot behind what used to be a grocery store. There's no music, no traffic, just the buzzing glow of an overhead light trying way too hard. You glance down expecting chewing gum or spilled soda, but instead there's this weird bump in the concrete. You lean closer. Something about it feels wrong. You nudge it with your toe. The pavement cracks with a quiet pop. You crouch, knees complaining, and brush away the grit. That's when you see it, a pale curve, like a seashell that's been waiting under centuries of dust. You touch it. It's hard. Too smooth to be stone, too light to be trash. A little thrill races up your spine. A small voice in your head mutters, "That's not modern." Of course, it could be nothing. A cow bone, some long-lost bit of construction, material. But there's this sense like when you walk into a room and forget why you're there except in reverse. You suddenly remember something you were never told, something old, and it's under your feet. You find a stick because obviously you don't carry around an archaeological toolkit in your glove box, and start poking. The gravel gives way, with surprising ease. Dirt crumbles like it's been waiting to fall apart. And under it all more bones and something else, wood, charred at the ends. Arranged in a loose rectangle. You don't realize it, but you've just stepped into the outline of a Viking longhouse. Now, if you're wondering what a Viking village is doing under a parking lot in the middle of modern nowhere, well, welcome to the mystery. See, in the late 800s, Norse settlers pushed further inland than most people realized. Archaeologists are still arguing about just how far they went. Some say trade routes led them deep into forested valleys. Others argue it's just Viking myth run wild. But when a village vanishes from the maps, it doesn't always vanish from the land. Right now you're standing on what's left of the communal hearth. You can still smell something. Faint, like smoke that got stuck in the soil and never quite left the air here. It tastes like ash and salt and time. Your fingers brush something gritty. It's a shard of clay, curved maybe from a pot. You pick it up and turn it over. There's a groove across the side, like someone carved a swirl with their fingernail. A decorative flourish or a signature. You wonder who made it. Maybe a woman with soot-smudged hands and a mind full of stories. Maybe a child pretending to help. The thing is, clay remembers, even if people forget. You dig a little deeper, the chill of the earth seeping into your bones. A jagged piece of iron surfaces, rusted but unmistakably forged. You stare. It's the head of a nail, handmade, uneven. Once part of a roof beam, a shield, maybe a coffin. Fun thought for bedtime, right? What you don't know, what you can't know yet, is that this little scrap of land you're disturbing used to echo with voices. Laughter, maybe. Screaming, probably. Viking life wasn't exactly a wellness retreat, but it was alive. And tonight it's coming back. You sit on the edge of the broken pavement, the cold seeping through your jeans. Your flashlight flickers. Of course it does. Batteries never respect dramatic timing. A breeze brushes past you. It smells old, not musty like an attic. Older, like rope, leather, fish oil, and yes, regret. You look up, half expecting to see a figure in fur and iron watching you from the shadow of a minivan. Nothing. Yet, because that's the thing about ghost villages, They don't show up when you want them to. They show up when they're ready. And this one, it's starting to stretch, like someone waking up after a 1,000-year nap and immediately looking for breakfast. You stand, brushing the dirt from your palms. You don't know it yet, but under your left foot is a broken comb made of whalebone. Under your right, a charm carved from antler, shaped like Thor's hammer. You'll find them later. Maybe, or maybe they'll find you. The wind picks up. It makes the traffic lights in the distance sway. The hum of the parking lot fades, and for a second, just a second, you hear something else. A rhythmic beat, like paddles hitting water. Far off, faint, and then gone. You exhale. Welcome to the first whisper of what was lost. You're not just standing in a parking lot anymore. You're standing on the threshold of a world that's been waiting to be remembered. And oh boy, it remembers you. You take a small, careful step forward. The asphalt beneath your boots doesn't crunch or shift this time. It sighs, as if it's grown tired of pretending it's just a slab of modernity and is finally ready to confess, yes, I'm hiding something. I always have been. You crouch again and feel along the outline of that charred wood you uncovered earlier. It's curved slightly, maybe warped from heat or centuries of damp earth, but it still holds its shape, still insists on being noticed. That's when you notice the soil. It's darker here, not just wet, but rich, oily almost. You lift a handful and rub it between your fingers. It smells of fire and fish, like someone dumped out an old stew pot and walked away for 1,000 years. You lean in and feel it again. The strange hum of memory. This place, whatever it used to be, it's not done telling its story. You start brushing the dirt aside more carefully now, like a kid peeling back layers of wrapping paper to find the real gift. And there it is, a flat piece of stone, smoother than you expect. About the size of a large textbook. If textbooks were buried in the dirt and covered in mysterious scratches, you hold your breath as you rub a circle clean. Symbols, carved, deliberate. 3 intersecting lines inside a circle, and a jagged pattern, around the edge like runes got into a fight with a pine cone. It's not the kind of thing that shows up in your everyday traffic survey. But to a trained eye, and even to your slightly freaked-out caffeine-deprived one, this looks like a boundary marker. You're standing at the edge of something, maybe a settlement, maybe a sacred site, maybe both. Historians have long argued about how the Norse organized their villages. Some think they were messy and unplanned, with goats everywhere and someone's uncle always hammering something at the worst hour. Others believe there was surprising structure. Longhouses aligned to the sun, ritual spaces tucked carefully beyond the living quarters. You're now discovering that the truth might sit somewhere in between. You walk a few steps further and pause. There's a dip in the ground, barely visible, like someone once dragged a sled across it. You follow it and the path leads you to a low mound, soft with moss and dandelion weeds. You kneel. The moss here isn't warm? Nope. That's your imagination. Or the leftover sun from earlier. Definitely not some ancient Viking aura soaking through your jeans. That would be ridiculous. Except, there's a clear impression in the mound. Long, narrow, a bit sunken at one end. You squint a boat or what's left of one. It's possible. The Norse often buried their dead in boats, especially warriors or folks with really good PR. A ship wasn't just transport, it was symbolic. It ferried souls to the afterlife, sure, but it also screamed status. Look at me, I died fancy. You gently press into the soil at the bow end. The dirt there is firmer. Something solid lies beneath. Wood again, maybe, or metal. You scrape just a little with your fingers and uncover a blackened nub of what might have been an oarlock. Your breath catches. This isn't just some random field. This was planned. That's when you spot it. Just a few feet from the boat shape. A small pile of stones, unnaturally arranged. 5 smooth rocks stacked with almost suspicious symmetry. You lean in, half expecting a raccoon to jump out, and see a lump tucked inside the center. Wrapped in, what is that burlap? You reach in gently and pull. It's small, palm-sized, and unexpectedly light. You brush away the clumps of dirt and weeds. It's a tiny animal carving, a bear, but not cute and cartoonish. This one looks tired, ancient. The lines of the carving seem worn down by wind or time or just a really long nap. A token, perhaps. A good luck charm? Or maybe it marked the resting place of a child. That thought makes you pause because now that you're looking, this part of the site feels different, softer, quieter. The air itself leans in a bit. This might have been a graveyard, not a dramatic, cobweb-covered horror show, but something peaceful, respected, sacred. There's an odd sort of beauty to that, how a strip of cracked blacktop and oil stains could rest so gently over a place of ancient grief and love. You wouldn't have guessed. You wouldn't even know to look here. But now, you feel like you're trespassing in someone's dream. You lean back and look around, and then you see it. Etched faintly on the side of a half-buried stone is a small spiral, a Viking sun symbol. Meant to guide travelers, meant to always point home. Someone left it here, for themselves, for others, for you. Historians still debate what the spiral truly meant. Navigation, protection, a celestial joke only their chieftain found funny. Who knows? But seeing it now, in this moment, with the wind whispering just so, it feels like the past is still navigating you, and just as you're about to stand and walk away, something under your foot shifts. You jump. Don't lie. You definitely jumped and scramble back. A tiny piece of the earth has caved in beneath you like a shallow pocket. You crouch and peer in. It's not deep, maybe a foot or two, but just visible in the exposed soil is a smooth edge. Stone again, yes, but this one is carved. You clear away a bit more, heart thumping faster than your smartwatch can track. A flat panel with notches like teeth, like a gate. Your stomach tightens. There's something down there, something someone wanted kept safe or hidden. You sit back on your heels, blinking up at the parking lot sky. You can still hear the faintest traffic in the distance. Someone honks. A plane hums overhead. But this pocket of ground, it doesn't belong to any of that. It belongs to itself, to its stories, to whoever walked here first. You reach for your flashlight again, low battery or not, and shine it down into the opening. It doesn't reflect, it absorbs. And suddenly, you're not just a curious wanderer poking around. Asphalt, you're an intruder. And the village, it's stirring. You don't move, not at first. That patch of darkness beneath the stone panel, too clean, too quiet, has an energy you can't quite name, like the pause in a horror movie when the music cuts out. Except this isn't a horror movie. It's a parking lot, right? You're probably imagining things, definitely. But just in case, you back up a little, slowly, respectfully. Like maybe this shadow has rules, and one of them is, don't get too close. You sit back against a concrete wheel. Stop and pull your hoodie tighter around you. The wind's picked up again. It nips at your ears and fingers like it's trying to say something in a language made of cold. You listen. You always do. That's what got you here in the first place. Behind your eyelids, images start to form. Not from memory, but from somewhere deeper. You don't just imagine the Viking village now. You feel it. You hear the clatter of tools, the low rumble of voices speaking a language rough and beautiful. There's a fire crackling nearby, spitting sparks into the dark, and someone's laughing, sharp, high-pitched, unmistakably a child. When you open your eyes, it's just asphalt and weeds again, but something lingers. You crawl back to the strange stone hatch, careful not to step on any more ghosts. You press your hand against the carved edge. It's smooth even now. Your fingers trace the notches. 1, 2, 3, 4. A code? A marker? Possibly. Or maybe just a pattern. The Norse were particular about their carvings. Even mundane objects were often laced with symbolism. A spoon wasn't just a spoon. It might carry a knotwork design meant to ward off evil spirits or nosy neighbors. You try pressing on the stone just a little. Nothing happens. Not that you expected a full Hollywood trapdoor moment, but still, part of you hoped. You lie flat on your stomach and shine the flashlight in again. There's a shape down there, wooden, angular, the edge of a box or a frame. And on top of it, barely visible beneath a layer of compact soil, is a row of small beads, glass maybe. One is deep green, another a smoky blue, and one is blood red. That one seems to glow a little. You blink. Probably just the light playing tricks. Still, you whisper, "Hello?" before you reach down. No one answers, obviously, unless you count the silence, which suddenly feels aware. You brush gently at the soil. The beads roll just slightly, like they're stretching their legs after 1,000 years. You pause because now that you think about it, glass beads weren't cheap. In fact, in the Viking world, they were downright luxurious. Traded, not crafted locally. Sometimes worn as necklaces, sometimes stitched into clothing, sometimes buried with the dead. You remember reading once that a single red bead could be worth the equivalent of weeks of labor. It told people, "I matter," which makes you wonder, who wore these? Who was this? You uncover a corner of what looks like cloth beneath the beads. It disintegrates when you touch it, but just for a second you catch the texture. Fine, woven, dyed. Not a peasant's wrap. Someone of status lay here, or was placed here, and nearby, as your fingers sweep wider, you find something else, metal. Cold and ridged. You pull gently and a brooch slides free. It's shaped like an oval, classic Norse design, with intricate knotwork etched along its rim. Bronze, probably, the kind that once held a woman's dress in place. Viking women wore two, typically, one on each shoulder with strands of beads strung between them like status necklaces and conversation starters. This isn't just a grave. It's a story. You sit back, dizzy with possibility. A female chieftain, a healer, a traveler from another tribe. The truth is, even the experts still argue over how much power Viking women actually held. Some sagas describe them as fierce, respected, land-owning warriors. Others paint them as background characters to their husbands' drama. But discoveries, like this, they muddy the waters in the best possible way. There's a reason archaeologists lose sleep over these finds. It's not the artifacts themselves, it's what they disprove. Like the time they thought a particular warrior burial was a man for over a century, until DNA testing said nope. She was very much a woman, and she'd been buried with a sword, armor, and a pair of horses. Classic mic drop moment from the afterlife. You lean back grinning. History loves being inconvenient. Suddenly you hear something, not loud. Not human, but real. It's a creak, like leather under pressure. A soft snap of twine, a sound so subtle you almost convince yourself it came from inside your own skull. Almost. You freeze, heart thudding so hard your ribs complain. Then, silence. Then, something shifts in the soil beneath you. Not dramatically. No zombies, no skeletal hands, just a settling. Like something adjusting its weight. You whisper, because somehow whispering feels safer. What are you trying to tell me? The air smells sharper now, like pine resin and iron. The wind carries the faintest hint of smoke. You could swear there's someone walking nearby, but when you glance around, it's only the flickering parking lot lights and your own breath. Still, the feeling doesn't leave. You're not alone here. That should scare you. But weirdly, it doesn't. You feel so welcomed almost. The flashlight dims, then sputters. You frown, give it a shake, then sigh. Of course, you tuck the brooch into your hoodie pocket, carefully, respectfully. Just borrowing, you whisper. Promise? And as you stand to leave the gravesite, the wind picks up again, just enough to blow a strand of hair into your face and carry with it a whisper of voices. You can't make out words. Not yet, but the tone is unmistakable. They know you're listening. They always have. You don't move. Not at first. That patch of darkness beneath the stone panel, too clean, too quiet, has an energy you can't quite name, like the pause in a horror movie when the music cuts out. Except this isn't a horror movie. It's a parking lot, right? You're probably imagining things, definitely. But just in case, you back up a little, slowly, respectfully. Like maybe this shadow has rules and one of them is, don't get too close. You sit back against a concrete wheel. Stop and pull your hoodie tighter around you. The wind's picked up again. It nips at your ears and fingers like it's trying to say something in a language made of cold. You listen. You always do. That's what got you here in the first place. Behind your eyelids, images start to form. Not from memory, but from somewhere deeper. You don't just imagine the Viking village now. You feel it. You hear the clatter of tools. The low rumble of voices speaking a language rough and beautiful. There's a fire crackling nearby, spitting sparks into the dark, and someone's laughing, sharp. High-pitched, unmistakably a child. When you open your eyes, it's just asphalt and weeds again, but something lingers. You crawl back to the strange stone hatch, careful not to step on any more ghosts. You press your hand against the carved edge. It's smooth even now, your fingers trace the notches. 1, 2, 3, 4. A code? A marker? Possibly. Or maybe just a pattern. The Norse were particular about their carvings. Even mundane objects were often laced with symbolism. A spoon wasn't just a spoon, it might carry a knotwork design meant to ward off evil spirits or nosy neighbors. You try pressing on the stone, just a little. Nothing happens. Not that you expected a full Hollywood trapdoor moment, but still, part of you hoped. You lie flat on your stomach and shine the flashlight in again. There's a shape down there, wooden, angular. The edge of a box or a frame. And on top of it, barely visible beneath a layer of compact soil, is a row of small beads. Glass, maybe. One is deep green, another a smoky blue, and one is blood red. That one seems to glow a little. You blink. Probably just the light playing tricks. Still, you whisper, "Hello?" before you reach down. No one answers, obviously, unless you count the silence, which suddenly feels aware. You brush gently at the soil. The beads roll just slightly, like they're stretching their legs after 1,000 years. You pause because now that you think about it, glass beads weren't cheap. In fact, in the Viking world, they were downright luxurious. Traded, not crafted locally. Sometimes worn as necklaces, sometimes stitched into clothing, sometimes buried with the dead. You remember reading once that a single red bead could be worth the equivalent of weeks of labor. It told people, "I matter," which makes you wonder, who wore these? Who was this? You uncover a corner of what looks like cloth beneath the beads. It disintegrates when you touch it, but just for a second you catch the texture. Fine, woven, dyed. Not a peasant's wrap. Someone of status lay here, or was placed here, and nearby, as your fingers sweep wider, you find something else, metal. Cold and ridged. You pull gently and a brooch slides free. It's shaped like an oval, classic Norse design, with intricate knotwork etched along its rim. Bronze, probably, the kind that once held a woman's dress in place. Viking women wore two, typically, one on each shoulder with strands of beads strung between them like status necklaces and conversation starters. This isn't just a grave. It's a story. You sit back, dizzy with possibility. A female chieftain, a healer, a traveler from another tribe. The truth is, even the experts still argue over how much power Viking women actually held. Some sagas describe them as fierce, respected, land-owning warriors. Others paint them as background characters to their husband's drama. But discoveries, like this, they muddy the waters in the best possible way. There's a reason archaeologists lose sleep over these finds. It's not the artifacts themselves, it's what they disprove. Like the time they thought a particular warrior burial was a man for over a century, until DNA testing said nope. She was very much a woman, and she'd been buried with a sword, armor, and a pair of horses. Classic mic drop moment from the afterlife. You lean back grinning. History loves being inconvenient. Suddenly you hear something, not loud. Not human, but real. It's a creak, like leather under pressure. A soft snap of twine, a sound so subtle you almost convince yourself it came from inside your own skull. Almost. You freeze, heart thudding so hard your ribs complain. Then, silence. Then, something shifts in the soil beneath you. Not dramatically. No zombies, no skeletal hands, just a settling. Like something adjusting its weight. You whisper, because somehow whispering feels safer. What are you trying to tell me? The air smells sharper now, like pine resin and iron. The wind carries the faintest hint of smoke. You could swear there's someone walking nearby, but when you glance around, it's only the flickering parking lot lights and your own breath. Still, the feeling doesn't leave. You're not alone here. That should scare you. But weirdly, it doesn't. You feel so welcomed almost. The flashlight dims, then sputters. You frown, give it a shake, then sigh. Of course, you tuck the brooch into your hoodie pocket, carefully, respectfully. Just borrowing, you whisper. Promise? And as you stand to leave the gravesite, the wind picks up again, just enough to blow a strand of hair into your face and carry with it a whisper of voices. You can't make out words. Not yet. But the tone is unmistakable. They know you're listening. They always have. You're standing there, caught between two worlds, the sterile glare of modern asphalt and the whispering woods beyond. It's like you've stepped through a door without knowing it, landing in the half-light of history and myth. You take a deep breath, trying to capture the moment, but it slips away like mist. That's the trick with time, isn't it? It never stays put, always just out of reach. You start walking again, your feet crunching on gravel as you circle back toward the main road. The village, buried below, waits quietly beneath the parking lot. It's patient. It has to be, after all. It's been hidden for centuries. Your mind drifts back to the artifacts, the beads, the brooch, the carved stones. Each one a puzzle piece, stubbornly holding on to its secrets. Archaeologists have spent decades arguing about similar finds across Scandinavia. Were Viking women warriors or just homemakers? Were the villagers farmers or traders? Did they worship Odin alone, or was there room for other gods? The debates never end, and that's part of the magic. You glance down at your hands, imagining the hands that once held these objects, rough from labor or delicate from craft. Maybe both. The sound of distant traffic pulls you back to the present. You shake your head, smirking at how fast the world moves, how little it seems to slow down for the echoes beneath our feet. You remember a quirky fact you read once. Vikings didn't wear horned helmets. That's a myth from 19th century Romanticism, designed to make them look more dramatic. Instead, their helmets were practical, often simple iron caps. You chuckle to yourself. No Viking ever tripped over their own horns in battle. You keep walking, letting the cool night air fill your lungs. It's the kind of air that makes you feel alive, aware, a little bit enchanted. The perfect atmosphere for a late-night history hunt. Ahead, the faint glow of streetlights flickers through the trees. Your phone buzzes, a reminder that reality still calls. But you don't reach for it. Not yet. Instead, you pause and look back once more at the parking lot. It looks ordinary, but now you know it's anything but. Underneath, a village sleeps, holding on to stories waiting to be told. You smile softly, and you promise yourself you'll come back. Because history isn't just about the past. It's about the connection between then and now, between you and them, between a lost village and the person brave enough to listen. You feel it, don't you? That subtle shift as you step closer to the past, like you've tuned into a frequency only a few ever catch, a whisper buried beneath the roar of everyday noise. Walking back through the lot, you can't help but imagine the lives that once animated this space. Families bustling in wooden longhouses, the smell of smoked fish mingling with fresh pine. Children chasing each other through narrow dirt paths, their laughter carried on the crisp northern wind. There's an old saying among archaeologists that every artifact is a voice. But here, beneath your feet, the voices seem louder, almost shouting from the shadows. You almost expect to see a Viking father sharpening his axe or a mother weaving wool beside the fire, and that's where the mystery deepens. Because, unlike many Viking settlements, this one left behind very little in the way of written records or grand monuments. What it did leave are the traces, subtle, silent, waiting for someone patient enough to read between the cracks. You recall a curious fact. Vikings had a form of writing called runes, but most everyday life was oral. Stories, laws, and histories passed down by word of mouth. Which means this village's story survived through objects, through the land itself, rather than ink on parchment. Historians still debate how much of what we know about the Vikings comes from their own stories versus tales spun by outsiders, sometimes enemies, sometimes admirers. That makes the artifacts here all the more precious. They speak in their own language, free from bias or exaggeration. Your fingers brush over the weathered edge of a small stone you'd spotted earlier, half buried near the hedge. It's etched, with more runes, faint, nearly worn away. You've learned some runic symbols translate to words like home, protection, or even memory. You press your palm to the stone and imagine the hands that carved it, probably with sharp flint or iron tools. A shiver runs down your spine. Not from cold, but from the connection. These stones are not just markers, they're promises. Promises that despite the parking lot overhead, despite the passage of centuries, this village's heartbeat remains. And then there's the question that lingers, like smoke from a dying fire. Why was this village buried here? Was it abandoned during a great storm, destroyed in conflict, or slowly swallowed by time and nature, leaving only whispers and shadows? You remember a lesser-known theory from a recent archaeological journal. Some Viking settlements were deliberately covered, or built over in later centuries, either to hide them from enemies or because the land was repurposed. That means beneath every modern building, road or parking lot, there could be secrets waiting. As you look around, the faint glow of city lights on the horizon contrasts sharply with the dark, quiet patch of woods behind you. The past and present, locked in a silent embrace. You smile, feeling a strange kind of gratitude, because you're not just a visitor here, you're a participant in this unfolding story. Each step you take peels back another layer, each discovery a small victory against oblivion. You pause for a moment, eyes closed, letting the night's calm wash over you. Somewhere, deep beneath your feet, the lost Viking village breathes, and it's calling you back. As you linger on the edge of that clearing, the cool night air wraps around you like a soft blanket, carrying faint whispers of times long gone. You can almost hear the crackle of fires and the low murmur of voices carried by the wind, though, of course, it's just your imagination playing tricks. Or maybe it's not. The village beneath your feet was once a hub of life, and life never really fades away. It transforms, shapes itself into new forms. Think of it like the way a river carves through rock, relentless, patient, quietly changing. The landscape. You recall a fascinating tidbit about Viking settlements. Many were strategically placed near waterways, not just for fishing, but also for trade. This one, despite being lost now, was no exception. Historians still debate exactly which routes connected these villages, with some suggesting a vast network stretching far beyond Scandinavia into Eastern Europe and even the Middle East. It's easy to get caught up imagining Viking longships slicing through waves, their sails billowing like giant birds, but there's more to their world than raiding and sailing. These communities were complex, connected, and surprisingly cosmopolitan for their time. You kneel to examine a small fragment of pottery lying just off the path, its rough edges chipped but still bearing faint patterns. Not something you'd expect in a parking lot, right? The pottery style suggests trade influences from distant lands, perhaps the Baltic, or even the British Isles. Each shard tells a story of journeys and exchanges, of cultures mingling centuries before globalization was a thing. The trees around you sway softly, their branches creaking like old timber, as if agreeing with your thoughts. You rub your hands together, remembering how cold your fingers had gotten earlier. Nothing a proper Viking would complain about, but for you, a reminder of the passing seasons. Suddenly, a quiet debate surfaces in your mind. One you've heard before among scholars. Were Vikings primarily warriors or settlers? The popular image glorifies battle and conquest, but many historians argue that these villages were primarily farming communities focused on survival, with raiding as only a small part of their identity. It's a fascinating contradiction, isn't it? Like thinking of your neighbor as a mild-mannered accountant, but discovering they're secretly an adrenaline junkie on weekends. History has layers, and the Vikings are no different. You stand and stretch, brushing dirt from your knees. The distant hum of the city feels less intrusive now, almost like a soft backdrop to your own private exploration. You wonder what else remains hidden here, just waiting for the right person and moment to uncover. As you walk back toward the parking lot, you catch a glimpse of something glinting near the roots of a tree, a tiny piece of metal, rusted but unmistakably crafted. Perhaps a fragment of a tool or a lost amulet. You pocket it carefully. After all, every little piece is a thread connecting you to those who walked here long before you. You're becoming part of their story now, and maybe, just maybe, they're part of yours. You're back in the parking lot, but something's shifted. The asphalt seems thinner, almost like a veil stretched over centuries of hidden stories. You glance down at the metal fragment nestled in your palm, feeling the weight of history pressing softly against your skin. The hum of the city feels distant now, like it's underwater, muffled by layers of earth and time. You wonder if anyone else ever feels this strange pull between the mundane and the mysterious, as if the ground itself is alive with secrets. The parking lot is a peculiar place for a Viking village, isn't it? Concrete and painted lines, replacing wooden planks and dirt paths. The contrast is almost jarring, like watching a high-definition documentary on an old grainy TV. But beneath it all, the village remains, waiting patiently. You start thinking about Viking burial practices. Everyone knows the grand image of a ship burial, the chieftain laid to rest in a boat surrounded by treasures, set aflame or buried under a mound. It's cinematic, almost mythic. But here's a twist. Not all Vikings got ship burials. In fact, most didn't. Some were buried in simple graves marked by stones or wooden posts. Some were cremated. Others, especially children or those from less wealthy families, had more modest farewells. Historians still debate why the more elaborate burials seem reserved for a select few. Was it wealth, status, or something else? The answer remains elusive, buried beneath layers of soil and centuries of silence. You recall reading that in some cases, burial sites were reused over generations, family plots, if you will. That means beneath this parking lot, there could be layers upon layers of stories, each one touching the next like threads in a tapestry. The idea sends a chill down your spine, not from cold, but from awe. You wander toward the edge of the lot, where the city lights meet the dark forest. A crow caws somewhere nearby, a stark reminder that life in all its noisy glory continues even here. But you know better. Life never really stops, it just changes shape, and sometimes it waits quietly beneath a parking lot for someone curious. Enough to listen. You take a deep breath, the night air filling your lungs with a mix of city grit and woodland freshness. Your fingertips brush the metal fragment again. It's small, unassuming. But to you, it's a key, a reminder that even the most ordinary places can hide extraordinary stories. You smile, feeling the gentle weight of the past in your pocket, and you know this is only the beginning. You decide to circle the parking lot one more time, letting your eyes scan the ground with a practiced patience. You're not just looking for artifacts anymore. You're searching for signs, whispers of the past tucked away in the present. Your footsteps echo softly against the pavement, mingling with the distant murmur of traffic and the occasional bark of a dog. You chuckle to yourself. Imagine explaining to someone from 1,000 years ago that their village would one day be overshadowed by cars, fast food wrappers, and the smell of burnt rubber. They'd probably think you were describing a cursed battlefield. As you crouch down, your fingers brush against something smooth yet oddly warm despite the night chill. It's a flat stone, smaller than a fist, engraved with faint swirling patterns. Viking art, no doubt, though the exact meaning is lost in time. Some experts believe such designs were meant to ward off evil spirits or to tell stories of gods and heroes. You hold the stone up to the moonlight. Its surface catches the glow, revealing intricate lines that weave together in a way that almost looks like a maze. You can't help but smile. Some things about Vikings never change. Complex, mysterious, and just a little bit sneaky as you tuck the stone into your pocket. A memory surfaces. Vikings used to carve runes not only for communication, but also as magical inscriptions. Some runes were believed to grant protection, strength, or even good luck in battle. The debate among historians about the true power of these runes is ongoing. Were they just symbolic, or did the Vikings genuinely believe in their magic? You stand and stretch, glancing up at the sky. The stars are scattered across the dark canvas like spilled salt, indifferent and eternal. You think about how those same stars must have guided Viking sailors on their long voyages across unknown seas, steering by constellations that most of us now only glimpse during camping trips far from city lights. A cool breeze brushes your cheek, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and distant smoke, as if the village itself is breathing through the night air. You smile softly, feeling more connected to this lost place than ever before. Because even in the humblest fragments, history pulses with life, And as you walk back to your car, the city lights fading behind you, you realize the story of this lost Viking village isn't just about the past, it's about discovery, connection, and the quiet thrill of uncovering what was almost forgotten. You find yourself drawn to the edge of the parking lot again, where the concrete meets the soft earth of a small, untamed patch of woods. It's a perfect place to pause, breathe, and let your mind wander through time. You imagine the villagers here centuries ago, how different their world must have been. No streetlights, no cars, just endless forests, rolling hills, and the vast, often unpredictable sea. Life was raw, immediate, and wrapped in the rhythms of nature. You think about Viking daily routines, the early mornings spent tending animals, the afternoons weaving or sharpening tools, and the evenings around the fire, sharing stories under the endless Nordic twilight. They didn't have Netflix or smartphones, but they had something maybe even better, their own rich tapestry of myths, legends, and community bonds. Speaking of myths, here's a quirky tidbit. Some Vikings believed that elves and trolls lived in the forests and hills around them. They'd leave offerings to keep these spirits happy and avoid bad luck. Imagine parking your chariot, or in your case your car, near an elf's favorite tree and hoping it doesn't get pranked. Makes modern parking problems seem pretty tame, right? You brush a hand over a moss-covered stone near the tree line, feeling the cool, damp texture beneath your fingers. This stone could be a boundary marker, a forgotten gravestone, or just a piece of the landscape. Archaeologists often face this challenge, deciding which stones tell stories and which are just nature's way of being random. There's still debate over how much the Vikings interacted with the mystical elements they believed in versus how much of it was storytelling and metaphor. It's one of those charming mysteries historians love to unpack. You glance back toward the parking lot, the contrast between the wild and the tamed striking. It's a perfect metaphor for this lost village, caught between nature and civilization, memory and oblivion. As you stand there, you realize that uncovering history isn't just about artifacts or dates. It's about piecing together a feeling, a mood, a connection to people who walked the earth long before you. And sometimes the best discoveries happen in quiet moments like this. You breathe in the night air, carrying a mix of ancient whispers and city sounds. You smile. Because the story isn't over, not by a long shot. You step away from the mossy stone and wander slowly along the edge of the forest, the shadows playing tricks in the dim light. It's easy to feel like you're crossing a boundary between two worlds, the bustling present behind you and the quiet, layered past ahead. You can almost hear the clatter of wooden wheels on dirt roads and the distant calls of villagers tending to their chores. That's the thing about history. It's not just dates and names. It's the hum of life, the everyday details that stitch moments together. Speaking of details, here's a fun fact. Vikings actually had a sophisticated legal system. Before they went raiding or trading, they'd gather in things, local assemblies, where disputes were settled, laws passed, and community decisions made. Imagine that, a bunch of warriors hashing out debates instead of just swinging axes. Some historians argue these assemblies were early forms of democracy, long before the term existed. You pause, imagining a scene from one of those things. The chieftain seated on a carved wooden chair, surrounded by farmers, blacksmiths, and traders, voices rising in passionate argument over land, livestock, or a broken oath. You smirk at the thought. Politics has always been complicated, no matter the era. As you continue your stroll, your eyes catch a glint near the base of a gnarled tree. You kneel down and uncover a small, rusted iron key. Not ornate or fancy, but clearly crafted with purpose. You wonder, what might this have unlocked? A chest? A door to a long-forgotten hut? Or maybe just a box holding trinkets and letters? Archaeologists often find these little objects and debate their significance. Some see them as mundane, others believe every key symbolizes a doorway to stories untold. You tuck the key into your pocket alongside the stone and metal fragment, feeling like a collector of whispers. Above, the stars have shifted, casting a cooler light on the landscape. The night deepens, and with it your curiosity grows. You realize that this lost Viking village is more than just a site. It's a bridge to understanding how people lived, loved, and dreamed in a time both alien and familiar. and you're lucky enough to walk that bridge tonight. You pause, feeling the cool night air brush your face as you stand at the edge of the forest clearing. The parking lot behind you a silent reminder of how time reshapes everything. It's strange to think that just beneath your feet, generations of Vikings once lived, loved and toiled. And now all that remains are fragments, pieces of pottery, rusted keys, and stones etched with forgotten runes. It makes you think about Viking craftsmanship. Their metalwork especially was remarkable. Despite their rugged reputation as fierce warriors, Vikings were skilled artisans. They forged weapons not just for war, but also for status and ritual. Their jewelry, often made of silver and gold, was intricate and symbolic, designed to convey power, protection, or faith. One of the lesser-known facts is that Viking blacksmiths often added decorative patterns called filigree to their metal pieces, tiny curls and knots woven into the metal like a delicate tapestry. It's a reminder that even in a culture that prized strength and conquest, beauty had its place. As you wander a bit further, your eyes catch something half buried in the dirt, a small iron brooch, its shape worn but still unmistakably Viking. Brooches were used to fasten clothing, but they were also status symbols. The more elaborate the design, the higher the wearer's rank or wealth. Historians still debate the exact meanings behind some of these designs. Were they family emblems, religious symbols, or just decorative art? The truth, as always, lies somewhere. In the middle. You run your thumb over the rough edges, imagining the person who wore it. Perhaps a mother tying a cloak around her child before stepping out into the cold, or a young warrior preparing for a journey across the seas. This village was home to people with lives as full and complicated as yours or mine, and each artifact you find, no matter how small, is a thread in their story. You look up at the night sky again, the constellations spinning silently overhead. The same stars that guided Viking sailors on epic voyages are lighting your way tonight. You pocket the brooch carefully, feeling the weight of history in your hand. It's a gentle reminder, even lost villages have voices, waiting to be heard, and you're the one listening. You rise from the stone and continue your stroll, feeling the gentle crunch of dried leaves beneath your feet. The night air carries a faint scent of pine and earth, grounding you in this moment between past and present. Vikings weren't just fighters and farmers, they were also traders who journeyed far beyond their homeland. Their longships sailed to the distant shores of the British Isles, the Mediterranean, even the Middle East. They exchanged goods like furs, amber and iron for silk, spices and coins. One surprising fact is that Viking silver hoards often contained coins from as far away as the Islamic Caliphate, showing how vast their trading networks really were. Imagine the thrill of holding a coin minted thousands of miles away, a tangible connection to a world you've never seen. Scholars debate how these distant connections influenced Viking culture. Did they adopt foreign customs, or were they more focused on preserving their own traditions? The answer seems to be both. Vikings were adaptable, absorbing useful ideas while holding on to their identity. As you walk, you imagine a bustling marketplace. In the village, filled with the sounds of haggling and laughter, the mingling smells of fresh bread, smoked fish, and exotic spices. Merchants from across Europe and beyond might have gathered here, their stories as colorful as their wares. You pause near a gnarled tree, its bark scarred from age, and think about how these trade routes weren't just about goods. They were conduits for ideas, technologies, and stories that shaped the Viking world. It's fascinating to realize that beneath this quiet forest and parking lot lies a hub of connection and exchange. You take a deep breath, feeling a newfound appreciation for the complexity of this lost village. History, it seems, is never as simple as it first appears. You step away from the burial mound, your footsteps soft on the carpet of pine needles. The forest around you feels quieter now, as if settling into a peaceful hush after centuries of stories whispered through the trees. It's fascinating to remember that the Vikings, often seen as fierce raiders, were also skilled craftsmen. Their artistry extended beyond weapons and jewelry to everyday objects like combs, tools, and even games. One little-known fact is that Vikings played a board game called sometimes called Viking chess. The game involved strategic Moves and captures, much like modern chess, but with a unique layout and rules. It was popular across Scandinavia and the British Isles, showing just how interconnected Viking culture was. Historians still debate the origins of Hnefatafl and how it spread, with some suggesting it may have influenced or been influenced by other medieval board games. Imagine villagers gathering around a table after a day's work, quietly plotting their moves and outwitting their opponents. You imagine the flicker of firelight illuminating faces, the quiet clack of pieces moving. On wooden boards, laughter and playful taunts filling the air. Even in a village marked by survival and hard work, moments of leisure and joy were essential. You find a flat stone nearby and sit, letting the night wrap around you. The weight of history feels lighter here, more human, more familiar. As you look up at the stars again, you think about how games like Hnefatafl connect us across time. Though the players are long gone, their strategies and fun live on, and that, you realize, is the magic of uncovering lost worlds. They remind us of the shared threads of life that bind us all. You wander farther into the clearing, the moonlight now soft and diffuse, casting gentle shadows that dance like whispers across the forest floor. The night is calm, almost reverent, as if the very air holds the secrets of those who walked here centuries ago. Ahead you spot a low mound covered in grass and wildflowers, barely noticeable but distinctly shaped. Could this be a burial mound, a resting place for one of the village's inhabitants? Viking burial sites are as varied as their culture, some marked by large stone cairns, others with simple earthen mounds. Burial customs were deeply significant, reflecting beliefs about the afterlife and honor. Some graves contained weapons, jewelry, or even boats, indicating the deceased's status or role in the community. You recall that archaeologists often debate whether these were intended to prepare the dead for a journey to the afterlife or to symbolize earthly achievements. The mystery of Viking burial practices extends further. Did everyone get a grand send-off, or only the elite? Evidence suggests a mix, with some simpler graves alongside extravagant ones. Some historians propose that as Christianity spread, burial customs evolved, blending old and new beliefs. You crouch beside the mound, running a hand over the soft earth, feeling the weight of countless stories pressed beneath your fingertips. It's humbling to think that this quiet spot might hold echoes of a life once vibrant. Laughter, sorrow, dreams, and hopes all resting here now in stillness. Nearby, a gentle breeze stirs, rustling the leaves like a soft sigh. The night feels alive with memory, a silent witness to the passage of time. You take a moment to breathe, letting the calm wash over you. This lost village beneath the parking lot isn't just history. It's a living story, waiting to be told. And you, dear listener, are part of it now. You take a step back from the pottery shards, the cool night air whispering against your skin as you glance upward. The stars are scattered across the sky like tiny lanterns left behind by ancient travelers, guiding, watching, silent. You pause. To think about Viking navigation, one of their most impressive feats. Without modern tools, they crossed vast oceans using the sun, stars, and natural signs like bird migrations and ocean currents. The legendary sunstone, a type of crystal, said to help locate the sun even on cloudy days, is a subject of heated debate among historians. Some believe it's myth. Others argue it was a real practical tool. Imagining a Viking navigator clutching such a sunstone, squinting into the grey dawn, you smile. It's like using a prehistoric GPS, except instead of voice commands, you relied on the whims of nature and a bit of magic. Back on land, you feel the rough bark of a nearby pine tree under your fingertips. It's sturdy and unyielding, much like the people who once called this place home. They built their lives around these forests, gathering wood for fuel, building homes, and crafting tools. Interestingly, archaeologists have found evidence that Vikings also used birch bark as an early form of writing material, inscribing messages and records. That's right. Before paper was widespread, messages were carved on bark, kind of like nature's sticky notes. The debate continues on how literate Viking society really was, with some arguing it was more widespread than previously thought, especially among traders and clergy. As you step away, the ground beneath your feet crunching softly, You feel the layers of history pressing close, reminding you that every tree, stone, and artifact holds a story waiting to be uncovered. You take one last deep breath of the crisp night air, the coolness filling your lungs and soothing your mind. And you know this journey through the lost Viking village is far from over. You take a slow breath, letting the cool air fill your lungs as you step carefully over a tangle of roots and stones. The forest feels alive around you, not just with the chirping of crickets or rustling leaves, but with echoes from centuries. Just nearby, a cluster of broken pottery shards lies half buried in the dirt. You kneel to examine them, marveling at the craftsmanship, simple yet functional, with faint traces of painted patterns worn smooth by time. Such pottery was essential to Viking households, used for cooking, storage, and even ritual purposes. What's fascinating is that the Vikings imported some pottery from distant lands, a sign of their vast trade networks. They might have exchanged furs, amber, or iron for ceramics from the British Isles or the Frankish territories. This connectivity surprises many who imagine Vikings as isolated barbarians, but the truth is, they were part of a complex web of cultural exchange. You remember a debate among historians about whether Vikings were primarily raiders or traders. The consensus now leans toward a nuanced view. They were both, adapting their strategies to circumstance and opportunity. As you cradle a particularly smooth shard in your hand, you imagine it as part of a humble bowl, perhaps used by a family, sharing a simple meal after a long day of work. You let your fingers brush the soil nearby, feeling the cool earth, still rich with life beneath the surface. The night sky overhead is clear, stars sparkling like ancient beacons. You smile softly, thinking about the countless nights these same stars watched over that long-lost village, shining down on lives that built, fought, loved, and endured. And here you are, tracing those stories with your own footsteps. History, you realize, is never truly lost. It waits patiently for those willing to listen. You keep walking along the forest edge, your footsteps soft against the moss and fallen leaves. The night feels alive, almost as if the trees themselves are holding their breath, waiting for you to discover what lies beneath the surface. You stop near a cluster of stones arranged in a rough circle. Could this have been a meeting place? A sacred spot? Archaeologists have found similar stone arrangements in Viking sites, but their exact purpose remains a mystery. Some believe they were used for rituals, others think they marked communal spaces or boundaries. It's a reminder that the Vikings' world was rich with symbolism and meaning, far beyond the axe-wielding warriors of popular imagination. In fact, many historians argue that their spiritual beliefs were deeply intertwined with everyday life, guiding decisions about farming, trading, and even warfare. Speaking of the spiritual, here's an interesting twist. Vikings didn't have a single unified religion. Their beliefs were diverse, with gods like Odin, Thor, and Freya coexisting alongside local spirits, elves, and ancestors. Some villages might have emphasized one deity over others, and practices likely varied widely. You imagine how the villagers gathered under the night sky, sharing stories of gods and heroes, weaving tales that would echo through generations. Maybe this very stone circle was the stage for one such storytelling night. Your fingers brush a weathered carving on one of the stones, a spiral pattern, worn smooth by time. It looks almost like a fingerprint, unique and impossible to replicate. You pause to reflect on the countless hands that must have touched these stones, each imprint a silent witness to history. As you turn to leave, the forest seems to sigh, releasing a gentle breeze that rustles the leaves like a whispered farewell. You take a deep breath, feeling more connected than ever to this lost village beneath the city. Because in these quiet moments, history isn't just something you read about, it's something you feel, and that feeling lingers long after the night ends. The moon rides high now, casting silvery light that filters through the trees, dappling the forest floor like nature's own spotlight. You step carefully, noticing how the shadows lengthen and twist, reminding you that this place is a crossroads of past and present. You recall an intriguing fact about Viking homes. Unlike the grand longhouses often depicted in stories, many villagers lived in smaller, simpler buildings made from timber and turf. These homes were built to withstand harsh winters, with thick walls providing warmth and protection. The hearth was the heart of the home, where families gathered to cook, tell stories, and stay warm. Archaeologists still debate how exactly these houses were arranged in villages. Some think they clustered tightly for defense, others suggest more open layouts for farming efficiency. Either way, the remains of such structures offer invaluable clues to daily life. You pause by a patch of disturbed earth, the soil softer and darker than the surrounding ground. Maybe an old fire pit or a cellar now long collapsed. Your imagination fills in the gaps. Children playing nearby, the smell of roasting meat, the glow of firelight flickering against wooden walls. Here's a fun historical tidbit. Vikings were surprisingly neat. Excavations often reveal well-kept homes with tools and household items stored carefully. Not exactly the image of wild barbarians, huh? You smile to yourself. Even the fiercest warriors had their cozy corners. The debate among historians about Viking hygiene and domestic life continues to this day, with new discoveries challenging old stereotypes. You lean down to examine a small pile of charcoal and ash, the faint scent of smoke still lingering after all these centuries. The forest is quiet except for the occasional rustle of leaves, a subtle reminder that nature always reclaims what's hers. You stand, brushing dirt from your hands, feeling a warm connection to the people who called this place home. Their stories aren't just etched in stone and soil, they're alive in the air you breathe, and tonight, they're sharing a little of their world with you. You wander a little deeper into the clearing, your footsteps crunching softly on twigs and dried leaves. The air feels cooler here, carrying with it the faint, almost imperceptible scent of smoke and wood, perhaps remnants of an ancient hearth, long extinguished. Vikings weren't just warriors and traders, many were also farmers cultivating crops and tending livestock. It's easy to overlook this side of their lives, but without farming, their society couldn't have thrived. You remember reading that barley, rye, and oats were staples in their diet, alongside root vegetables like carrots and turnips. They even brewed ale from grains, a tradition that continues in some Scandinavian countries today. Here's a neat detail. Archaeological digs sometimes uncover charred seeds, offering clues to the types of plants they grew. It's like finding a recipe book written in ashes. You crouch to examine a patch of soil that looks recently disturbed, maybe an old garden bed, or a place where villagers once planted seeds. You can almost see hands turning the earth, planting for the seasons ahead. There's a certain poetry in this, people who lived 1,000 years ago investing in tomorrow just like we do. Historians still debate the extent to which Viking farming was self-sufficient versus reliant on trade and raiding. Some argue that while they were skilled farmers, their voyages brought in resources that enriched their communities. You stand, brushing dirt from your knees, feeling the night settle around you like a soft blanket. A distant owl hoots, adding to the forest's nighttime symphony. You smile to yourself. Life, death, farming, and war, all woven together beneath this quiet sky. This lost village is more than just a place on a map. It's a tapestry of lives, hopes, and dreams. And tonight, you're part of that story. You continue along a narrow path, the scent of damp earth mingling with the crisp night air. The forest seems to hold its breath, as if guarding the secrets buried beneath its roots. Among the artifacts discovered at the site, one curious find stands out, a small, intricately carved wooden figurine. At first glance, it looks like a simple toy, but experts believe it might have been more than that, perhaps a talisman or a representation of a deity. Viking art often included detailed carvings of animals, gods, and mythical creatures, blending symbolism with craftsmanship. The famous Oseberg ship burial, for example, was adorned with exquisite woodwork, showcasing the artistic skill of the time. Interestingly, some historians argue that such figurines served a dual purpose, both as religious icons and as everyday objects that brought comfort or protection. The debate continues over how widespread religious symbolism was among ordinary villagers. Were these carvings a private matter or part of larger communal rituals? You reach out to touch the rough bark of a tree, thinking about how much has been lost and how much remains hidden beneath layers of soil and time. The forest whispers softly around you, a gentle reminder that history is alive and breathing. waiting for curious minds like yours to uncover its stories. You smile, feeling a quiet connection to those ancient hands that crafted these objects, and to the beliefs that shaped their world. And with every step, the lost village reveals itself. A little more. You pause for a moment to listen to the soft rustling of leaves and the distant call of a night bird. The forest's nighttime symphony is a perfect backdrop as you reflect on Viking storytelling traditions. Vikings were master storytellers, passing down their history and myths orally through generations. The sagas, long epic tales about gods, heroes, and legendary deeds, were central to their culture. These stories weren't just entertainment, they preserved identity and values. Here's an interesting tidbit. Many sagas were written down centuries later, which means historians debate how much of the original oral tradition changed in the process. Some parts might be myth, others fact, and often the lines blur. You imagine the village gathering around the fire, the flickering flames casting shadows on eager faces, as a storyteller's voice weaves tales of Odin's wisdom or Thor's mighty hammer. Such stories taught lessons about bravery, loyalty, and the consequences of one's actions, values still relatable today. You find a smooth, flat stone and sit, feeling the coolness seep through your clothes, grounding you in this quiet moment of reflection. Even though the village is buried beneath layers of modern life, its stories live on, waiting for someone like you to listen and remember. You smile softly, knowing that every story told keeps history alive, and that, my friend, is the true magic of this journey. You stand up from the stone and continue your walk. The soft crunch of leaves underfoot, blending with the distant murmur of the city beyond the trees. It's strange to think that just beneath the bustling modern world lies this forgotten Viking village, resting quietly like a secret treasure. One detail that surprises many is how Vikings balanced their warrior spirit with everyday domestic life. Women in Viking society, for instance, had significant roles, running farms, managing households, and even influencing political alliances through marriage. They were far from the stereotypical damsels in distress. Archaeological finds, like women's graves containing weapons and high-status jewelry, have sparked debates among historians about gender roles in Viking culture. Some suggest women could have been warriors or leaders, while others argue these grave goods symbolized status rather than combat. You imagine a strong Viking woman standing by the fire, weaving wool or planning the day's work, her gaze as fierce and determined as any warrior's. Nearby, the wind rustles through the leaves, almost like a whisper of forgotten voices, reminding you that history is full of surprises and untold stories. You pause to consider how the lives of these villagers were woven from threads of strength, resilience, and community. And tonight, you're a part of that tapestry, tracing their steps beneath the stars. You carefully navigate a patch of uneven ground where broken stones peek through the moss like forgotten puzzle pieces. The air feels heavier here, as if you've stepped closer to the heart of the village. One fascinating discovery at the site is a set of iron nails, remarkably well preserved despite their age. These humble objects played a vital role in Viking life, used in everything from shipbuilding to house construction. It's easy to picture skilled hands hammering nails into sturdy timbers, crafting the iconic longhouses that sheltered families through harsh winters. These structures were often large communal spaces, with a central hearth and walls decorated with tapestries and carvings. Interestingly, the Vikings developed advanced woodworking techniques, allowing them to build strong, yet flexible ships capable of withstanding ocean storms. The debate among historians is whether these shipbuilding skills originated locally or were influenced by interactions with other seafaring cultures. You run your fingers over a small, rusty nail, marveling at how such a simple tool connected the people here to faraway lands and adventures on the high seas. As you stand, the forest around you hums softly with nighttime life, a reminder that beneath the surface lies a world of stories built on ordinary things. You smile, feeling grateful for the chance to uncover even the smallest pieces of this lost village. You tread gently now, as if the very ground might whisper back if you're quiet enough. The canopy above shifts with the wind, casting mottled shadows across the path ahead, like the ghost of an old village lane rediscovered in moonlight. You pause. By what looks like a shallow dip in the earth, barely noticeable unless you're really looking, but archaeologists believe such impressions could be the remains of food storage pits or even rudimentary cellars. The Vikings were clever about preserving their food, especially in the colder months when hunting or foraging wasn't so easy. A lesser-known fact? Vikings sometimes stored fish and meat in pits lined with birch bark and insulated with turf or snow. Nature's very own Viking refrigerator. It might not pass today's health codes, but hey, they didn't have Yelp reviews. There's debate among historians over whether these pits were for storage or ritual purposes. Some suggest that specific placements or odd contents, like burned bones or buried tools, point to ceremonial use, not just pantry duty. It's like finding a mini fridge and wondering if it was a cooler or a shrine. You crouch near the dip and imagine a villager bent over, carefully wrapping smoked salmon in birch bark, layering it with moss and stones, maybe even humming a low tune as they work. The practicality of it all is oddly comforting. Sudden breeze stirs the tall grass and you can almost smell it. Wood smoke, dried fish, and damp earth. It's a reminder that life here wasn't just about exploration or war. It was also about survival, invention, and everyday routines, cooking, storing, preparing for winter. You rise and take another slow step, feeling like you've just brushed against something ancient and invisible, not dramatic, just real. You follow the path as it curves gently around a thicket of ferns, the night air wrapping you in its cool embrace. Each step feels like a thread pulling you deeper into the fabric of this long-lost world. There's a clearing ahead, and in the center, half buried in moss and dirt, you spot the rounded shape of a grindstone. It's large, weather-worn, and almost easy to miss, but unmistakably man-made. You brush your fingers over its pitted surface and imagine the sound it once made, the rhythmic scraping of metal against stone. Sharpening tools wasn't just a chore. It was a vital part of survival. Axes, knives, scythes, all had to be honed regularly, especially in a community that depended on precision for farming, hunting, and building. A dull blade wasn't just inconvenient. It could mean the difference between success and injury. What's surprising is that some grindstones, when analyzed, show different wear patterns, suggesting they were used not just for blades, but also for polishing jewelry or even prepping pigments for dyes. That opens a whole new realm of domestic activity, one that hints at aesthetic care, trade, and maybe even a little vanity. Some historians argue that the presence of decorative items and grooming tools in modest villages like this one reveals a side of Viking life rarely emphasized in popular culture. These people weren't just warriors and farmers. They took pride in appearance, skill, and craftsmanship. You lean back and imagine the old village sounds, the rasp of stone, the hiss of steam from cooking pots, the murmur of children playing nearby. The grindstone, once a quiet hub of daily activity, now sits silent, slowly returning to the earth. But tonight, for a moment, you've woken it, and it's good to remember. Even in a world of legend and lore, some of the most telling details come from the ordinary. The grindstone behind you fades into the underbrush as you walk deeper into the woods where the trees grow denser and the night air seems to hum with memory. You breathe it in. Pine, damp moss, a trace of wood smoke that surely isn't there, and yet feels perfectly placed. Your foot brushes something half buried. You kneel and gently uncover a curved shard of ceramic, once part of a vessel used for cooking, storage, maybe even for carrying ale to a midsummer feast. Viking pottery rarely survives intact, but the fragments found in this village tell stories of domestic life, of meals shared, hands warmed, laughter traded beside a fire. Unlike their jewelry or weapons, Viking ceramics were simple, practical, unglazed. But what they lacked in beauty, they made up for in function. What's especially intriguing is that some shards found nearby bore traces of exotic spices, suggesting trade routes that reached far beyond what anyone would expect from a woodland. Settlement under a future parking lot. Traces of cinnamon, black pepper, even saffron, luxuries in a humble pot. Historians debate whether such spices were reserved for chieftains or shared at communal gatherings. Were they symbols of status? Or did a well-traveled merchant Gift a pouch of something fragrant to a cook with a curious mind. You smile, imagining a Viking woman tasting a dish with imported pepper for the first time, eyes widening, a quick smirk as she mutters, "Too much." You know the feeling. Even centuries later, the line between adventurous and regrettable, seasoning remains thin. The shard is warm from your hand, its texture rough and familiar. You place it gently back where it belongs. Somehow this broken piece tells as much of a story as a golden brooch or a rusted sword. The magic isn't always in the grand discoveries. Sometimes it's in realizing someone once cooked soup here. And tonight, in the hush of the woods, you've heard it. The path narrows again, winding beneath low-hanging branches that tickle the top of your head as you pass. The air feels cooler now, denser, as if the trees here remember more than the others, and they're not quite ready to share it all, Yet you brush past a tangle of vines and emerge into a small clearing. There, under a blanket of moss, lies what looks like the base of a hearth, a ring of darkened stones charred in places, arranged with too much purpose to be natural. You crouch beside it, imagining the flicker of firelight that once danced here, the warm hum of conversation, the way smoke must have curled up and disappeared into a simple vent or thatched roof above. Fire was the center of everything in a Viking home. It provided light, warmth, a place to cook, and a gathering point for stories. The hearth was where sagas were told, bread was baked, and children fell asleep to the rhythm of adult voices weaving tales and plans. But here's something many people don't realize. Viking hearths sometimes doubled as altars. Bits of bone and ash carefully placed under hearthstones suggest offerings to household spirits, perhaps for protection, luck, or simply gratitude. There's debate among scholars whether these offerings were part of Norse religion or older regional beliefs that blended over time. As with many things Viking, the truth is layered, like the soot-stained stones you're touching now. You close your eyes for a moment and picture a family gathered here on a long winter night. The mother stirring a pot of porridge, the father mending a fishing net, a child giggling under a wool blanket, and a grandmother softly chanting a lullaby to the rhythm of the crackling flames. The simplicity of it tugs at something quiet inside you. So much of history is loud, battles, kings, dates. But this was life. The scent of burning wood, the heat of a bowl passed hand to hand, the way shadows moved across faces you'll never know. And in the quiet of this clearing, you let that warmth settle into your bones. You rise slowly from the hearth, brushing dirt from your hands, and step back onto the trail, your footsteps soft and measured. The memory of that fire lingers, less like smoke now, more like a feeling. As you continue walking, the ground flattens into what might have once been a village path. It's hard to tell. The forest has done a good job of reclaiming it, but something about the space, the way the trees give it room, suggests people once walked here with purpose. Then you see it, the faint impression of a post hole. Just a round dip in the earth, but multiply that by 20, and you get the ghost of a longhouse, stretched like a rib cage across the land. Viking longhouses were architectural marvels of their time, built using timber frames, with turf-covered roofs and woven walls. They were warm, sturdy, and built to last. Some could reach up to 80 feet long. Think of it as the open-plan living room of the 10th century, minus the Wi-Fi, plus the goats. What's fascinating is how archaeologists identify them. It's not about walls or roofs. Those are long gone. It's about the pattern of post holes, hearth remnants, and darker soil where organic material once broke down, like reading Braille written in dirt. In this village, the longhouse likely belonged to a family of some standing, maybe the same folks who buried their riches under the stone slab. But not every longhouse was equal. Some had internal divisions, living space on one side, livestock on the other. Yes, that means you'd be eating dinner while a sheep stared at you from the corner. Cozy. Historians still debate how many people lived in one longhouse. Was it a single family? An extended clan? Did unmarried warriors bunk together like a Nordic frat house? You pace the perimeter of the site, tracing the lines that aren't really there, and yet are. It's amazing how absence can carry such weight. The walls are gone, but the lives lived within them still echo if you're listening, and tonight you are. You picture the longhouse lit from within, voices rising over clinking bowls, the low bleat of animals and laughter too big for the small space, and as the forest leans in close around you, it's as if those voices whisper again, faint but warm, like embers under ash. You step away from the stained earth, heart steady, breath measured. There's a stillness in the air again, not the silence of peace, but the charged hush of something watching or remembering. You feel it in your shoulders, in the soles of your feet. The trail bends, dipping into a grove so dense it muffles the world. You push through ferns and undergrowth, and there, partially hidden beneath tangled roots, you see it. A large, flat stone slab, cracked down the middle, not natural, you fee. Kneel, brushing aside dirt, and your fingertips find the faint edge of runes, not decorative but carved with care. Angular, deliberate. You can't read them, but you don't have to. This is a runestone, and it's speaking even if you don't understand the words. Runestones weren't just markers, they were messages. Commemorations of the dead, announcements, of lineage, even warnings. They were often raised to honor someone who had died bravely, or who had traveled far. X carved these runes in memory of Y, who died in the East, loyal to the king, was a common formula. But there were others, poetic, bitter, even boastful. Some were placed near burial sites, others along paths, some in sacred places like this one, where the lines between the living and the dead wore thin. Historians still argue whether all runestones were meant to be read aloud, spells of memory spoken into the air, or if some were meant only for the gods. This one feels private. As your hand rests against it, something flickers in your mind's eye. A face, not yours. A woman, maybe? Standing here, her hand on this very stone, her mouth moving, but no sound. You blink. Gone. It's probably nothing. Probably. You lean in closer. One rune looks newer, its groove deeper than the others. Recut, maybe, or added later. It's shaped like a T, the rune for Tiwaz, linked to the god Tyr. Justice, honor, sacrifice, the one who lost his hand to bind a monster. You wonder, was this stone carved for someone who gave something up? A warrior? A law speaker? Or someone no one else would honor? You whisper something back. You're not sure what, just something to break the silence with care. Then you step away, slowly, eyes on the cracks, the soil, the carved voices lingering in stone. The runestone says nothing. More, but it doesn't need to, you heard it. You move slowly away from the water's edge, still feeling the quiet weight of it in your chest. The trees around you sway again, just slightly, enough to remind you that not all stillness is natural. Some of it is chosen. A few steps farther, and you smell something strange. It's not the damp loam or sweet pine you've gotten used to, it's sharper, metallic, with a bitter edge. You follow it, and soon the soil beneath your boots turns darker, sticky, and then you see it. A patch of ground-stained deep reddish-brown, long-dried but still clinging to the memory of something spilled violently, a bloodstain fossilized by time. Or so it seems. It's likely that this was once the site of a ritual, or perhaps a violent conflict. Viking belief systems, especially in more remote settlements like this one, occasionally involved blots, ceremonial blood offerings. Animals, and rarely humans, were sacrificed in sacred groves or near altars to honor the gods and ensure good harvests, victory in war, or protection from illness. Historians argue over how common these sacrifices were. Were they symbolic, literal? Some sagas describe them in vivid detail, others suggest they were rare, even taboo. But archaeological evidence, animal bones, blood traces, butchered remains found near cult sites, suggests that the line between ritual and slaughter was very real. You crouch near the edge of the stain. Your fingers hover above it, but you don't touch. It's dry, but it doesn't feel dead. More like sleeping. Nearby, something catches the light. A flat stone set apart from the others, its surface etched with spirals and notches. A vey stone, a sacred boundary marker. These were used to mark holy ground, spaces where regular rules didn't apply, where time stretched differently, where the gods, if they were watching, stood just a little closer. You take a step back. Not out of fear, out of respect. This place wasn't for ordinary village life. It was set aside for ceremony, for sacrifice, for something that couldn't be contained within walls. You exhale slowly, letting the chill settle over your shoulders. The stain is faded. The gods are quiet. But the echo is still here, pulsing faintly beneath the earth like a drumbeat you can't quite hear but absolutely feel. And in this moment, you realize some places were never meant to be paved over. Some stories stain deeper than stone. The forest opens again, just slightly, as you step into a stretch of land that feels off. Not in a menacing way, but in a way that makes your skin prickle, like walking into a room and forgetting what you came for. The air here is damp, heavy, and there's no breeze. You look around and there it is, a shallow pool of still water tucked between two ridges. You'd miss it if you weren't paying attention. But something about its shape, its placement, its eerie stillness suggests it wasn't always just a puddle. You crouch down. The water is black with depth. You drop in a small pebble. No splash, just a quiet plip. And then silence again. Viking. Villages sometimes built their settlements near water. Streams, inlets, marshes. But this wasn't for drinking or fishing. This was for watching. Here's a little-known fact. Vikings believed water could be a threshold, a mirror to the world of spirits, ancestors, gods, bodies of still water, especially those untouched. By sunlight were sometimes used in rituals, places where offerings were made or visions sought. Archaeologists have uncovered objects in bogs and pools just like this: jewelry, tools, weapons, even human bones. Were they sacrifices, accidents, ceremonial gifts to unseen forces? No one agrees. The debate goes deeper. Were these water rituals part of mainstream Norse religion or remnants of older pre-Viking animism? You'll find scholars arguing about that over mugs of coffee well into the night. You stare into the water a bit longer than you should. Your reflection stares back, warped slightly, as if another version of you lives down there, just slower and quieter. Then, as you lean closer, you spot it. Something beneath the surface. A glint. Small. Circular. You reach out, then pause. Maybe. Leave this one undisturbed. Instead, you whisper a word. Not in Old Norse, you don't know any, but something that feels like respect. The pool doesn't react, but something in the air lightens, just a touch. You stand. This wasn't a source of water. It was a window, and tonight it blinked. You continue past the barrow, the ground underfoot softening as the forest begins to thin. Suddenly your foot catches on something hard and angular, half buried in the soil. Kneeling down, you brush away dirt and find a fragment of a carved wooden shield, weathered, faded, but unmistakably Viking. Shields were not just defensive tools, they were extensions of identity, each one uniquely painted and decorated, telling stories about the owner's lineage, achievements, or gods they worshipped. Imagine the pride and fear wrapped up in holding such a round wooden disc during battle. Here's a quirky fact many overlook. Viking shields weren't always perfect circles. Archaeologists have found evidence some had slight oval shapes or even reinforced metal bands, suggesting customization far beyond the one-size-fits-all image. There's an ongoing debate among historians about how much shield patterns really mattered. Were they merely practical, or did they send coded messages across battlefields? Maybe both. You run your fingers over the grain, imagining the warrior who once gripped this shield. Was he young or old, nervous or eager? Did he believe in the gods watching over him, or was it just a sturdy piece of wood in his hands? As you rise, a cool breeze whistles through the trees, carrying faint echoes of clashing swords and shouted commands. It's a reminder that beneath every artifact lies a story, some lost to time, others just waiting for you to hear. You tuck the shield fragment in your mind's pocket and move onward, curiosity leading your steps. You leave the things Ted behind, the echo of imagined voices fading as the path bends toward a rocky outcrop, bathed in soft moonlight. This is no ordinary hill. It's a barrow, an ancient burial mound, rising gently above the earth like a sleeping. Giant Vikings built barrows as monumental markers, places to honor the dead, often those of importance, chieftains, warriors, or respected elders. Some were simple earthen mounds. Others were elaborate constructions layered with stones, timber, even ships buried beneath. What most people don't realize is that barrows were more than graves. They were symbols of power and memory. A barrow wasn't just where someone was, laid to rest. It was a statement to the living. This is who we are, this is where we come from. You imagine the rituals that might have taken place here. Mourners gathered, chanting ancient songs, the scent of burning herbs swirling in the air, flames flickering against stone faces carved with runes. A horn blown into the night, its mournful call reverberating across the land. Interestingly, some barrows have been found with layers of different burials, added over generations, like a family album etched in soil and stone. Archaeologists debate whether these were acts of remembrance or attempts to claim ancestral legitimacy. You run a hand along the mossy surface of the mound, feeling its coolness through the fabric of your sleeve. Nearby, wildflowers have taken a root, delicate bursts of color in the shadow of ancient bones. The air here feels thick with stories of battles fought, alliances forged, and lives lived fully in a world that was often harsh and unpredictable. The barrow stands silent but resolute, a timeless sentinel guarding the secrets beneath. As you step away, the night breeze carries a whisper, half memory, half promise, that even in darkness, the past remains alive, waiting for those who listen. You step softly out of the birch-shadowed grove, your breath still slow from the quiet it held. As the trees part, the light shifts again. Cooler now, tinged with the grey-blue of pre-dawn, though you know that can't be right. Time bends strangely. In places like this, ahead the land opens into what might once have been a gathering space. Flattened earth ringed by low stones, barely noticeable unless you're looking for them. But now you are. Everything matters a little more after walking through a forest of the dead. This, you realize, was a thingstead, the village's legal and communal heart. A place where disputes were settled, laws recited, and the occasional insult was probably hurled across the circle with just enough flair to be memorable. Viking society wasn't just axes and ale. It ran on rules. Every community had its own thing, an open-air assembly that met to handle justice, trade issues, land conflicts, basically the Viking version of town hall, but with more goats and fewer microphones. What's fascinating is how democratic it all was. Yes, there were chieftains and jarls, but even regular landowners had a voice. Anyone could show up and speak their case. Of course, outcomes could vary, especially if your cousin had more cattle or a better beard. You kneel beside one of the stones and place your hand on it. Cold, rough, unmoved. But imagine it. Voices rising, hands gesturing wildly, one elder standing tall to calm them all. Maybe a mother arguing for the return of her dowry, maybe two brothers disputing the boundary between their sheep fields. The issues may sound quaint now, but they mattered deeply then. Here's a curious truth. Some Viking laws were memorized in poetic form. That's right. Justice was delivered in rhyme. Not because they were trying to entertain, but because it helped them remember. Thou shalt not steal thy neighbor's stew, unless his cow has eaten your shoe. Okay, maybe not that exactly. Historians still argue over whether women could speak at these assemblies. Some say they were barred, others point to sagas with powerful female figures making claims. As always, the sagas offer both answers and ambiguity. You rise and circle the thingstead once, slowly, respectfully. The air feels charged, not ominous, just aware, like the land remembers being listened to, being decided upon. And for a brief moment you almost hear it. Voices not angry, but firm. The weight of words that shape the world, falling onto stone, one syllable at a time. You don't interrupt, you just keep walking. The trackway narrows behind you, swallowed slowly by the creeping moss and fog. Ahead the ground firms up again, and your feet find surer footing as you climb a gentle rise. The trees thicken, but differently this time. Not wild, planted. You fee. Pause. These trunks form a loose grid, too symmetrical to be nature's doing. You run a hand along the bark of one, birch, younger than the rest of the forest. A reforested orchard, maybe. But why would a Viking settlement plant trees in lines? Because what you're walking through was once a graveyard. There's no stone, no carved names or crosses. Just subtle mounds, raised beds in the earth, each marked long ago with a birch or pine. Vikings often planted trees over graves, believing the roots would connect this world to the next, like living runes drawn from sky to soil. And here's something few realize. Not all Viking graves were for warriors or chieftains. In quiet villages like this one, burials were often humble. A woman wrapped in woven cloth, a child nestled with a carved toy. A man laid to rest with the same knife he used to carve spoons. Sometimes stones were arranged in ship-like shapes around a burial. Not full ships, mind you, just outlines. To sail into the afterlife, you didn't need a boat, just the idea of one. You kneel beside one small mound, noticing something glinting just beneath the leaves. A rusted brooch, simple, oval and plain. Nothing grand, but someone once pinned it carefully to a tunic and said goodbye. Historians still debate whether Vikings feared death or embraced it. Their sagas speak of Valhalla, yes, but also of hell, a quiet, cold underworld. Maybe it wasn't about fear at all. Maybe it was about placement. Burial near the village meant remembrance. Burial near water, a passage. Burial under a tree, a whisper to the roots. You breathe in. Even the air feels hushed here. You can almost see them. The villagers who once stood in this grove, holding hands, lowering a loved one into the earth. Someone might have played a harp or recited lines from a family saga. And then they planted a tree, not for mourning but for memory. As you move gently among the mounds, you feel oddly calm, like the silence here isn't empty but full of names that no longer need saying, of stories told once and never again. And you, just a traveler passing through, carry one of those stories now. You follow the faint path as it curves downhill, the scent of damp earth growing richer with each step. The trees thin slightly here, revealing a marshy hollow nestled between two ridges. In the moonlight, it glistens faintly, like a secret being, kept just out of reach. You step carefully, squish, squish, and there, half buried in peat and patience, lies something remarkable. A wooden plank. You might think, so what? A soggy old board? But wood doesn't usually survive 1,000 years. For this to remain, the soil had to be just acidic enough, just oxygen-poor enough, like nature's own time capsule. It's not a random board. You're standing at the edge of what was once a trackway, a carefully laid wooden path that let villagers cross the bog without sinking to their knees in muck. And yes, Vikings knew how to engineer walkways, even through landscapes that were more puddle than pasture. What surprises most people is just how sophisticated these paths could be. Some trackways stretched for miles, connecting settlements, fields, and even sacred sites. Made from interlocking logs or split planks laid over brush and stone, they were sturdy, clever, and occasionally cursed. No, really. Archaeologists have found ritual offerings, tools, jewelry, and even animal bones, buried alongside certain trackways, suggesting they weren't just practical, but sacred. Some believe these bog crossings were liminal spaces, thresholds between worlds, places where the veil was thinner. A bit like an airport, but with more mud and less overpriced sandwiches. There's debate, of course. Some scholars say those offerings were just trash tossed into the swamp. Others argue they were deliberate acts of devotion to gods, land spirits, or ancestors. The truth? Well, it's squishy, like the peat beneath your boots. You imagine a boy maybe 10 years old, tiptoeing along this very path, a basket of eggs wobbling in his hands. He pauses at a creaky board, tosses a glance to the side where mist curls low and ominous, and whispers something under his breath, a blessing just in case. The bog accepts it with silence, and tonight, so do you. The trackway stretches ahead, just enough to suggest direction. You take a step, and then another, listening for the creak of ancient wood beneath your feet. You leave the forge behind, but it stays with you, a faint hum in your ears like the ghost of a hammer strike echoing across centuries. Your steps are quieter now, more deliberate, as if you've begun to sense the rhythm of this place, and Then you spot something low and moss-covered, nestled against the base of a tree, a grindstone's twin. Oh no, this one's flatter, wider, with a deep central groove. You kneel and run your fingers along it, a whetstone maybe. But what you're looking at is likely part of a quern, a Viking hand mill, used to grind grain into flour by hand every single day, often by the women of the household, sometimes the children. Before breakfast could happen, someone had to earn it. And here's the surprise. Viking villages like this one often had multiple querns. Not because people were bad at sharing, but because the work was constant. These weren't electric mixers. They were slabs of rock that demanded time, strength, and rhythm. You'd rock one stone over another, crushing barley into meal with the help of nothing but muscle and a morning prayer. What most people don't know, Viking women were responsible for much of the food economy. Not just cooking it, but processing it from scratch. They brewed the ale, fermented the dairy, dried the fish, and ground the grain. They didn't get battle songs or epic poems, but without them, the rest of the saga would have starved. Historians debate whether querns like this one were used communally, or if families guarded theirs like precious relics. After all, if you've ever had to cook without coffee first, you understand. The stakes. You picture a girl in a wool tunic, still sleepy, kneeling at this very spot as she pushes the heavy stone back and forth. A slow rhythm, steady and soothing. She might be humming to herself or muttering about how her brother never does his share. You smile. Some things, it seems, haven't changed, and as you rise, brushing lichen from your palms, you feel it again, that strange blend of weariness and awe. You didn't just stumble on ancient tools, you found a pulse, a domestic heartbeat thumping faintly beneath the dirt, and for tonight, it's yours to keep. You step carefully along the edge of the invisible longhouse, the air still thick with imagined warmth. But now the wind shifts slightly, carrying with it a different scent, earthy, metallic, and unmistakably sharp. You follow your nose, and, before long you spot it, a small scatter of blackened rocks and slag, the ghostly remains of a forge. It doesn't look like much, just a patch of scorched earth and a few misshapen iron lumps. But this right here was once the heartbeat of creation. The Vikings weren't just raiders and traders, they were smiths, blacksmiths, silversmiths, even goldsmiths in the larger towns. In every village, someone knew how to tame fire, bend iron, and make things that lasted. Swords, sure, but also nails, plowshares, brooches, locks, and keys. Here's something you probably didn't know. Viking. Blacksmiths believed iron had spiritual significance. Some tools were buried with the dead, not just for utility in the afterlife, but as protection from evil. Iron, in many Norse beliefs, repelled the supernatural, spirits, trolls, or worse. And yet, historians argue about how widespread those beliefs really were. Were they local superstitions or rooted in deeper Norse tradition? As always, the truth hovers somewhere between the myths and the metal filings. You crouch beside a rock that seems to have cracked from intense heat. Imagine a man, hair tied back, soot on his face, muscles working as he pumps bellows with one hand and turns a glowing blade with the other. Sparks flying, sweat dripping, his expression focused, almost reverent. In a time before electricity, before industry, forging metal was like magic. And blacksmiths, they were part craftsman, part wizard. They didn't just make tools, they made futures. You stand and glance around. This part of the forest is darker, quieter, as if the trees remember the hiss of quenching water, the hammers ring on iron, and have fallen respectfully silent. You listen too. And in that silence you realize that even now you're walking through a village of fire shapers, people who change the world, one glowing blade at a time. You move through the battle-scarred clearing, careful not to disturb anything. Not out of superstition, though let's be honest, that's creeping in now, but because it feels wrong, like touching a wound that never quite healed. Ahead, the forest seems to pull back, revealing a narrow trail lined with uneven stones. This wasn't meant for war, it was meant for flight. This is the escape path. You follow it, and suddenly everything feels smaller. The trees close in, the light fades further, and even your footsteps seem muffled, like the world is holding its breath. The Vikings had no illusions about permanence. When their villages were threatened, They didn't always stay and fight. Some stayed, yes, but others had backup plans. Hidden routes out, emergency stores, burial caches full of valuables. You spot one now. Tucked under a ledge of rock behind a curtain of bramble is a small pit lined with stone. Empty now, but unmistakably a hiding place for coins, jewelry, maybe even sacred relics. A handful of these caches have been found in real-life excavations, often only partially looted, as if someone had planned to come back, but never did. You crouch beside the pit. A few pebbles still show signs of smudged black, a burned wooden lid perhaps, or cloth. You imagine it. A woman hurriedly dropping silver rings and a carved bone comb into the pit, hands shaking, eyes scanning the forest. Behind her the village burns. In front of her nothing is certain, only that here something must be saved. Not just things. Meaning. You stand, brushing off your hands, and move on. The path tightens again, winding between two steep slopes. It's hard to see more than a few feet ahead, and then you hear it. Not wind, not birds, breathing. You freeze. It's low, close, ragged. You turn slowly, heart thudding, and see nothing. But the sound remains. Steady, human. You step forward, and there. In a shallow dip in the earth you see the impression of a body, not a skeleton. Just the shape left behind. A curled figure beneath collapsed earth and moss, the kind of form only visible when the land hasn't quite let go. You kneel beside it. Something glints near the edge. A bead, glass, dark blue. Simple. Precious. Whoever this was, they didn't make it far. Maybe wounded. Maybe too old or too young. Maybe they stayed behind so someone else could get away, and suddenly it all feels very real. Not legendary, not dramatic, just human. You sit there for a while. The breathing fades, and you realize it. Wasn't from the forest, it was your own, held tight, now slowly let go. This wasn't a trail of escape, it was a trail of sacrifice and memory, the kind that never really disappears, even under moss. You descend from the watchpost slowly, your boots crunching over loose stones, your breath curling in the chill air. The wind still murmurs behind you like a warning you're pretending not to hear. The trail winds downward into a low, narrow valley flanked by twisted trees and jagged boulders. The ground here is uneven, scarred in long, shallow grooves. They look natural at first, but you've come too far to fall for that. These are drag marks, wooden sleds maybe, or shields, or bodies. This is where the village made its last stand. Vikings didn't have fortresses in the way castles later did. Their defenses were often improvised, a ring of stones, a makeshift palisade, a line of armed villagers shoulder to shoulder. What they lacked in walls, they made up for in resolve and desperation. You follow the lines down to a flattened area, what was once an open field, now pockmarked with stone fragments and broken tools. A battle site, quieted by centuries but still vibrating faintly underfoot. You spot a spearhead lodged between two rocks, rusted but still sharp. You leave it alone. These things don't want to be moved anymore. Here's something unexpected. Many Viking villages, even the small ones, had militia-style systems. Not standing armies, but trained citizens who could rally in moments. They practiced with spears, axes and wooden shields, taught their children to form shield walls. Not for glory, but survival. There's some debate among scholars whether children fought in these battles. Sagas suggest yes. Archaeological records are murkier, but you can almost feel it in the air, how chaos doesn't wait for anyone to grow up. You step into the middle of the clearing, and suddenly everything shifts. The wind stops. The birds go. Silent, and for a moment you hear it. The clash of metal, the low roar of shouted names, a scream that doesn't end in silence but memory. You turn. Nothing there, just ghosts and the stories they left behind. You walk on, past a shattered helmet, past a collapsed shield, past a stone stained darker than the others. This village didn't fall quietly, it fought. And now you're standing in the place where it happened. Not just a ruin, a choice, a refusal. And that matters more than you can say. You look up at the sky, grey and stretched, like it's holding something back. You breathe it in anyway. You walk forward, because the story's not over yet. The path out of the clearing is uneven, almost reluctant to let you go. Each step feels like a small release, as if the ground itself is exhaling beneath your feet. The handprint still lingers in your palm, not physically, but like a warmth. That shouldn't be there. Not from the stone, from something else. You glance over your shoulder once before moving on. The torch is gone. The stone is just a stone again. But now you know better, don't you? You continue uphill where the trees begin to thin and the air sharpens. The scent shifts. Less moss, more salt. You're getting closer to open sky and something else, wind. Not a breeze, but wind. Raw and sudden. It comes howling down the slope in a burst that bends branches and lifts your hood. You brace yourself, heart thudding, not because of the force, but because of what rides on it. Sound. A low, thunderous hum, like distant drums, rhythmic, layered, faint, but rising. You push forward, heart quickening. The trees open, and there. It is. The remains of a wall half collapsed, half swallowed by dirt and vines. Beyond it, wide open space. You step through the broken stone and into the remnants of what must have once been a watchpost, or maybe even a signal station. The view knocks the breath from you. Below, the valley, the forest, the long-forgotten lines of the village curling through shadow. Above, the sky, pale with clouds dragged sideways by a fierce wind. And in the center of this ruin, chained to a stone pillar, lies what you weren't expecting. A wooden beacon frame, charred, collapsed, ancient. This was a warning fire. When Viking settlements feared attack, raiders, Saxons, rival clans, they lit great beacon fires on the highest hilltops. The flames would be seen for miles, passed from outpost to outpost, a burning signal that said, "Prepare yourself." Historians still argue about how organized these networks were. Were they regional, connected to larger alliances? Or did each village light its own fire and hope the others understood? You walk around the beacon's remains. Charcoal still clings to parts of the frame. A fragment of twisted iron lies nearby, once part of the anchor chain that held the fire basin aloft. But here's what makes your skin prickle. The beacon wasn't just scorched, it was torn down, splintered, sabotaged. Someone stopped this village from warning the others. You pause, heart pounding. Was it an enemy from within, or someone trying to protect the secret of what was coming? You glance up at the clouds. The wind howls again, louder now, and for the briefest moment it sounds less like wind and more like screaming, not from fear, not from pain, from war. You take a deep breath and steady yourself. The fire went out. The village didn't. Not yet. You step away from the well, legs unsteady, not from fatigue, but from the way the ground feels different now, as if something deep beneath it shifted while you weren't looking. A slow, silent exhale from the belly of the world. The whisper is gone. But something else stirs. You walk without thinking, guided more by instinct than intention, until you spot it through the trees. A figure. At first, you think it's a person, human, solid. Then you realize it's not. It's a torch, a single flame, flickering in the open air, with no hand holding it, no pole supporting it. Just a red, wavering light floating 5 feet off the ground like it's waiting. You take a step forward. It bobs slightly. Like it noticed. The Vikings had a name for this kind of thing. Lygra logi. False fire. A will-o'-the-wisp, a wandering flame said to appear near burial grounds or battlefields. Some believed it led the souls of the dead. Others believed it lured the living into danger. The scholars, they're still arguing. Some blame natural gas, marsh decay, magnetic fields, science doing what it does best, explaining away mystery. But no matter what you call it, it's here. The flame drifts forward. You follow. Of course you do. It leads you down a narrow slope toward a clearing that shouldn't be there. Dark, wide, and silent. The flame hovers at the center, and then, slowly, lowers itself toward a stone platform ringed by burnt wooden posts, an altar. Not of worship, of warning. You move closer. The stone bears deep grooves and reddish stains, long faded, but never truly gone. This was a place of sacrifice, or execution. In Viking lore, there were crimes so grave they couldn't be punished by simple exile or fines. Nidinga was the worst of them, reserved for cowards, traitors, oath-breakers. A Nidinga wasn't just banished, they were unmade, killed, buried without honor. Sometimes not buried at all. Some sagas speak of their names being erased from memory, their blood spilled on cursed stones, their bones left where no tree would grow. You run your hand over the edge of the altar, cold, rough, still sharp in places. The torch flares suddenly, just once, then goes out. Darkness. You freeze, then slowly your eyes adjust. And in that dim light, you notice something carved into the base of the stone, a handprint, pressed deeply into the rock, human-sized. A mark that says, "I was here, I paid." You lay your palm over it. The fit is close, and the moment your skin meets stone, the forest goes still. No birds, no wind, just your breath and the pulsing memory of flame. Then slowly the sounds return, and you step back, leaving the handprint behind. This wasn't a place of fear, it was a place of reckoning. And you, strangely, feel like it just reckoned you right back. You remain seated on the edge of the stone circle, letting the hush of the clearing settle into your bones. It's not silence, not really. The forest still breathes, leaves rustle above you, something small scurries in the underbrush. But here in the ritual ring, those sounds feel distant, filtered, like you're listening through water. Your fingers drift to the center of the circle. The soil is loose, disturbed not long ago, maybe from the wind, maybe not, and then you hear it. Not with your ears. It starts as a vibration in your chest, low, hollow, like the slow echo of a voice inside a deep cave. A whisper, not in English, not in anything you recognize, but it doesn't feel foreign. It feels old. You stand slowly, turning toward its source, but there's no one there. And yet you're not alone. Your eyes are drawn to a dark shape near the tree line, a well stone-lined and sunken, choked with moss and leaf rot. You wouldn't have noticed it if the whisper hadn't pulled you toward it, like a thread caught on your thoughts. You approach, and the feeling intensifies, not dread, not fear, just wait, like someone's waiting. You peer in, no bottom, no reflection. Just dark water far below, and your breath echoing as it falls down the shaft. This is no ordinary well. The Vikings believed certain wells, Urdabrunner, were sacred. Not for drinking, but for listening. They were said to connect to the roots of the world tree Yggdrasil, where the fates themselves, three sisters older than time, wove destinies in silence. Some wells were protected. Others feared, because what they revealed could not be unseen. You feel a chill crawl up your spine. There's a small stone ledge beside the well, just big enough to kneel on. You hesitate, then lower yourself slowly, knees pressed into the damp. Moss. You close your eyes and you hear it. A voice, not a word, not a sentence. A sensation, like a hand brushing across your memory, pulling something forward you didn't know you had. You see flashes, a carved boat, a stormy sea, a woman crying beside a fire. Then nothing. The well goes quiet again. You open your eyes. Above, the trees sway gently, indifferent, but the whisper has left its mark. You feel it in your heartbeat, in the back of your throat. The voice from the well didn't answer a question. It asked one, and though you don't know what it was, some part of you is already searching for an answer. You rise and the forest exhales. You walk in silence now. Not because you're afraid, though let's be honest, the woods are doing an excellent job of giving haunted but polite, but because something about that rune stone changed the pace of your thoughts. It feels like a door just cracked open behind your eyes, and now the forest around you isn't just a setting, it's aware. The ground begins to slope gently downward. You follow the dip, boots sinking into soft earth that smells like moss, iron, and memory. And then you feel it before you see it, a pressure, a shift in temperature, their pulse. You step through a thicket and into a hollow so quiet it might as well be underwater. And there, standing in the clearing like she never left, is Ragnar, or Someone like her. She's not really there. Not solid, not ghostly either. More like an imprint. A figure etched into the moment, like a fingerprint left on a wineglass long after the hand is gone. She's older now than when you first imagined her. Taller, wrapped in furs. A necklace of bone or maybe teeth rests at her throat. Her hair is braided tightly and her eyes are not human. They shine like ice in starlight, calm, distant, a little dangerous. You don't move. You just watch. She lifts one hand, not in greeting, not in warning, but in that open, heavy way people do when they carry more than they can say. Then she turns slowly and begins to walk into the woods. Away from you. You follow. Not quickly. Carefully. The ground is uneven here and the trees grow twisted. You realize with a small jolt that this path wasn't made for feet. It's older than that. A trail of instinct more than engineering. She leads you to a ridge, a low rise scattered with stones and hollowed trunks. And then, as suddenly as she appeared, she's gone. You're alone again, or not quite. Because there, half buried in the center of the ridge, is a circle of stones. Smaller than a longhouse, too wide for a grave. It's a ritual ring, a gathering place for those who spoke with the gods, or claimed to. Vulvas, seeresses, women who walked between worlds, feared and respected in equal measure. Some were born into the role, others trained. All were a little different. You sit on the edge of the ring and run your hand through the dirt. It's soft, as if something, or someone, was just here. Viking society didn't always trust magic, but they used it when crops failed, when war loomed, when dreams turned dark. The vulva would be summoned, offered food, silver, or sometimes blood, and asked to speak, to see. There's a constant debate among scholars whether seeresses truly had influence or were used as political tools, like oracles dressed in wolfskin. But the sagas? The sagas don't hesitate. They show women like Ragnar walking with gods, cursing kings, foretelling storms. You look back to the trees, no sign of her, but in the quiet of the ring, you feel something ancient coil softly around. Your spine, not unkind, not hostile, just aware. You've stepped into the realm of those who were never fully in one world or the other, and now, something's watching you too. The forest gradually thins as you leave the shallow grave behind, each step pulling you further from the scene of flight and deeper into the question it left behind. Who made it out? And where did they go? Your feet find a worn path again, one, not carved by modern hands, but etched through centuries of use. It winds downhill, gentle at first, then steepens, zigzagging through a rocky outcrop until it opens, suddenly, quietly, onto the edge of a wide riverbed. Even in the dark, you can tell this is no ordinary river crossing. The stones here are arranged, flat, deliberate, worn smooth by thousands of feet, and at the water's edge, half sunk into the mud, is the rotted spine of something unmistakable. A longboat. Small, meant for river travel, not ocean raids. You step closer, and the water laps gently at the splintered hull. Not many people associate Viking life with rivers, but inland waterways were crucial. They connected villages, moved goods, enabled escape when roads were watched or burned. What you're seeing is what's left of a getaway plan. Some made it. You can feel that. Maybe not. Many, but enough. Nearby you spot another clue, a bundle of charred timbers stacked intentionally. Not driftwood. This was once a boathouse or a slipway, used for storing and launching vessels in a hurry. And here's the twist. Some archaeologists believe Viking riverboats weren't just emergency transportation. They were lifelines. A village could fall, but if the river was open, so was survival. It's why settlements like this often had a second harbor, away from the main roads. Hidden, quiet. There's a constant debate about how organized these escapes were. Did the villagers have signals? Codes? Or was it pure chaos, people running blind into the trees? From the traces you're following tonight, it feels planned, rushed, yes, but not desperate. Someone knew this might happen. Someone prepared. You look upriver. The current is steady. The trees bend toward the water, whispering secrets in a language you'll never quite catch. But your body understands the rhythm, the urgency, the movement, and suddenly you can almost see them, a line of survivors boarding the boat, children carried, elders guided, a few clutching sacks of grain, others nothing but the clothes they wore. No shouting, just urgency. And behind them, smoke. They push off. The boat disappears into the fog. The village behind them burns. But they live. You step back, the soft mud gripping your heels for just a moment longer, as if the river doesn't want you to forget. You won't. This isn't just a place where things ended, it's where something began again. The river pulls at you, not physically, but with that strange emotional gravity of a story mid-turn. You imagine standing on the boat's edge, the hull groaning beneath your feet, hands raw from rowing, eyes locked on the blackened skyline behind you. They didn't speak, not much. Just the dip of oars and the breathing of people too tired to cry. Maybe someone hummed, a mother maybe, softly, just enough to keep a child calm. The survivors floated upriver into the unknown. And now, so do you. You follow a footpath that hugs the bank, weaving between tall reeds and knotted birch trees. The moon glints on the surface beside you, and for a moment you see something, reflected, not real, a shimmer of sails. Long gone, but still echoing. You come to a rise where the river bends sharply, and just beyond it, half collapsed and covered in nettle, is a wooden marker. A post, maybe once part of a dock or a waystone. Barely more than a stump now, but carved with a familiar shape, a crossed circle. Not Christian. Not entirely. This symbol belonged to transition, crossroads, decisions, and the sacred meeting of directions. The Norse believed such places were powerful and dangerous. This river bend, it wasn't just geography. It was a boundary, not just between land and water, but between what came before and what had to come next. You crouch near the marker, brushing moss aside. Below the symbol, crudely carved, is something else, the faint outline of footprints, not drawn but etched, as if someone wanted to mark that they had stood here, right here, looked back, chosen forward. There's a theory among historians, still debated of course, that some Viking groups believed the act of fleeing wasn't dishonor, but a sacred task, a preservation of story. If someone lived to tell what happened, then it wasn't defeat, it was continuity. You run your hand over the wood. It's soft now, rotting at the edges. But the symbol remains. You wonder who carved it. A warrior, a mother, a child told to wait by the tree while the others unloaded what little they had. The boat has long since gone. The survivors too. But they left this mark like a whisper. We passed. Through. We kept going. Remember us. You rise and look downriver, then upriver again. The current is steady either way, but your path is clear. And as you step away from the marker, you feel a flicker of something ancient and defiant ripple through your chest, the kind of feeling you get when you're part of a story that refused to die.